Hey everybody, welcome to the Sort of Okay show about horses with Buck and Kyle. I'm Kyle, this is my co-host or host.
I'm Buck. I'm in the USCF offices. Thank you, USCF, for allowing me to use your free internet.
Well, I'm glad that you found somewhere to steal someone's internet, because God knows your usual production at home isn't very good. Although we're going to miss Aubrey not being in the show.
Aubrey has got her first fashion contract. She has got the clothes people here at the horse park and the campground trying all kinds of dresses on for her. So good job, Aubrey.
Yeah, be careful with those free clothes that people give you for your kids, because usually what happens is you end up buying a lot more than what they've given you.
Yeah, well, that's my wife's deal. So anyway, we'll credit card does not go towards that anyway. There's nothing on the credit card, especially this time of year. No chance.
We'll start a GoFundMe page for clothes for your kid.
Exactly what. There you go. GoFundMe, because we're really broke. We ride horses.
Yeah.
God, we're battling major diseases and things like that. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those things. But anyway, let's get on with the show here.
Okay, so we're going to do a little recap on Fair Hill. Buck was there, and we'll talk about the winners and some of the stuff that's gone on there. What was your take on Fair Hill? Was it the usual top level cross country course and needed a little bit more punch everywhere else, or what do you think?
Well, first off, Fair Hill has never had a weekend that nice. The weather was absolutely beautiful. They got the rain the weekend before, a lot of it. So the ground was perfect. The conditions were perfect. There were hardly a cloud in the sky the whole weekend. It wasn't too windy. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. The ground wasn't too hard. It wasn't too soft. The barns didn't flood for the first time in I don't even know how long. So the weather gods were certainly looking over us. And, I said to Derek on Friday that I thought it was the best course that he'd ever done at Fair Hill. The cross country there is usually great, but it really flowed a lot better. There was a lot more galloping. Now, like I said, the conditions were absolutely perfect. So I think that's why you saw so many horses inside the time. And so that was good. The dressage and the show jumping were kind of sort of status quo. That nothing really changed with that. But it's amazing when the weather is good, how you have a different perspective on the event. For me, it was a little bit disappointing weekend. But as far as the event, I think it was the best Fair Hill that there's ever been, and the crowd certainly turned up. And it's the cross country day was, I think, a great show. I'm still think there's a long way to go in putting on a show for people to actually show up on the Sunday. I mean, there's actually a few people there for the 2-star, but by the time the show jumping actually takes place for the 3-star, everybody's gone. And there's sort of 2 hours of absolute dead time. And, so I think we need to figure out a way to come up with a better show for the people that actually turn up for it. But anyway, nonetheless, it was a good Fair Hill. Marilyn Little was first and second, and so I'm sure she thought it was probably a great Fair Hill. And but on the whole, I think the horses were come out looking fresh on Sunday, and like I said, the conditions were perfect, and it was a real cross country course and a good competition.
Well, I did think it was sort of interesting how it looks like in the 3-star, whatever finished clear.
Yeah, it was. So, Sharon White said that to me too. She said there wasn't one person that finished with a 20.
No.
And that was, but I think that maybe a little bit the modern sport, like there's so many options now, and you get nothing for having a stop or whatever. And so the idea of completing anymore is, back 20 years ago, it was a big deal just to complete, and now, if you don't have a chance, if you didn't do a good dressage, you might not run. If you had to stop, you might not, you might not continue on. So, the horses have gotten so expensive, and it's, I think there is, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but it is what it is. That is for sure.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting because it's, like when people commented on it, they would say like, oh, well, it was, look, 30 horses, I think, finished, and there was no penalties on the jumping. And I think you got it. I think the reality is nobody carries on when they have the 20 now. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go home. There's no going through it. And in the end, it is sort of interesting because I do think you lose a little bit of the learning how to deal with adversity, which is, I think, a huge part of our sport. It's not always going to be perfect. You got to, sometimes things are going wrong and you got to find a way to resurrect it. And you've got to practice that. I think as much as anything, you got to practice winning, you got to practice coming back from things being a little bit off, that type of stuff. And unfortunately, as our sport's evolving, it's evolving to very much ribbon based, very much how my success is how I did competitively, instead of, wow, you wouldn't believe what I managed to, how I managed to pull this off. I might have ended up 25th, but I really learned how to be part of something and really be valuable when my horse needed me. That's the type of stuff, which I will say, then taking it further, is what you make teams around. So this, having the stop shouldn't be like, oh my God, the world ends. I'm not saying I wouldn't maybe consider the same thing, but I tend to be a little bit more like go down fighting, Yeah,
I mean, I agree with you. The flip side is that horses only have so many jumps in their life. They only have so many steps in their life. And everything's obviously getting so expensive that, just saving that one trip to the vet, or saying, saving those 15 more jumps gives you another competition at the back end of their career. So, I understand both sides. I see both sides. And I've done both sides, and so it is, but I would certainly agree with you that the sport has turned into a little bit more of the jumpers, and just it's all about winning, and all people put on the internet is their ribbons, or they've won this, or their rankings, or whatever that don't mean a whole heck of a lot, I don't think. A lot of it's so number based anyway that, and I've been a beneficiary of that plenty of times. And but it is a very real thing that looking after our horses and taking care of them, and there is sometimes it's not actually just about winning, but it's actually just looking after the horse and just saying I messed up, so the horse deserves better, and I'm going to save them for another day, because let's face it, that's what the owners have the horses for, is to try to win. And nobody likes to make that phone call and say that their horse is lame, and worse off that it went lame after you had to stop. And so I don't know what to do about it. My sense is it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. But here we are in the modern world.
Yeah, and I mean, back when I was younger and I did more show jumping, my coach at the time, like you see in the show jumping, people have the rails and they just pull up and nod their hat. And my show jumping coach always, right or wrong, and he was a good coach, and it was an excellent coach, and he was a very good rider, and he rode on Nations Cup teams for Germany, which is obviously takes some doing. But he would go, if he felt like things were not going the way he wanted, he wouldn't pull up. He would jump the wrong fence and come home with the technical elimination. I'm not sure exactly how that correlates to the scoreboard, but he would do it so that then he could pick a jump to have one good jump that might not be in part of the course, so he could set it up, have a good jump, and then finish it with the horse on that. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have those options in eventing very often. And I wouldn't say that when I'm going off course that's why I'm doing it, but then I certainly do enough of going off course. But the horses do have to feel confident, and if they're not feeling right, you do also have to be smart enough to come home with them. So it was interesting because without a single run out or anything, it kind of does look like I think there were 30 horses that got through the whole thing, and if all of them are clear, it does sort of tend to make it look like it's easy. I know Fair Hill's never easy.
The other thing is, though, that I think that I think the only mistake that I saw at Fair Hill is, probably the hardest combination on the course was, I believe it was spent 6. It was a table turned to 2 angle brushes in the woods, and going back over it, Kim was the rider rep, and she called me and asked me if what I thought of everything, and if there was anything. And I thought it looked fantastic, and that's exactly what I told Derek. But after being the second to last horse, and my horse, the light certainly changed, and I couldn't get him to jump that fence to save my life. I could hardly get him to go behind it. And then I realized, there was no option. And so when he ran off the first one, and it was a really long stride, so I think a lot of the people actually, their problems were actually at that fence. And so in hindsight, that was probably a place where it was overlooked, that it probably would have been a good place for an option. Not blaming anybody. It's nobody's fault except for the riders, because nobody said anything. And honestly, if I hadn't had the problem at the end where I did, I wouldn't have even noticed it. But once I had to stop, I'm like, what am I going to do here? And that goes to another sort of the point of the show, and that time of year and the light being so bright. If you looked at the difficulties of the course, it certainly happened in the last quarter that the trouble came and the light really changed. Philip fell on his horse just before me at the fence just before it. There was a water. The water was basically a pretty normal fence, but I jumped it right after him, and it was a white top, and it looked like a brown line way out in front of it. And then the next fence was completely pitch black. And so I think, I think that needs to be addressed, because, and just the same when the 2-star started at 8:30, I was out there watching Will Coleman, and he rode a beautiful round, but certainly the light was different for him than it was for the guy that went at 11 o'clock. And it's interesting how, Badminton can run 100 horses or whatever, and they can go from 11 to 3 and somehow make it all work, And Fair Hill starts at 8:30 and finishes at, maybe it was 9:30, I'm not sure, but the light was certainly a factor.
Okay, but then I would add in that, though, that, and this is the reality in our sport, is it's not a level playing field, and you address your round based upon what you need to do by the light, by the footing changing, and so I don't disagree with what you're saying about the light obviously having a huge effect. I know at Stableview a couple of weeks ago when I went out on my prelim horse, I think I was actually riding, and the first jump I cantered down to it, kind of put my hand up because I wish I'd ridden in sunglasses because I was having difficulty actually seeing the jumps. I just put it down to I'm getting old and my eyes are going. But I know that I was like, holy crap, I didn't really factor that in there. But when I was doing it, and it was actually on my training horse, that's right. And when I was doing it, I had about 6 jumps that were a little that way. And I had to ride those jumps differently than I had intended because of that. And I could say, well, that's not, it's not fair because the guys earlier didn't have to contest with that problem. But that's where, to me, our sport is a little bit, you really are riding a lot of times against yourself and the course, not against the competitor who went earlier.
Yeah, no question. And I'm not in any way blaming anybody for what happened for me. I think it is, I go a lot of times first in the morning at a lot of events, and that's first in the morning, late in the afternoon. And I had one official say to me at an event that I was at, that it was at Poplar, and I was supposed to be first to go, and you couldn't see a couple of jumps.
I remember that.
I said, I'm not going until the TD comes and looks me in the eye and tells me that it's safe. And they said, no, they're going to eliminate you if you don't go. And we all just stood there, and I said, whoever the second person wasn't going to go.
I was the third at that one. I remember it, and I was actually happy you were first because I was like, well, I don't really want to go out, and I don't really want to stand up either. I just want to go and, have a run.
And and then after enough people sort of said, I'm not going, the TD actually went around and took off a few fences, then came and looked me in the eye and told me it was safe. But, they started off saying, oh, well, that's not that big a fence. It doesn't matter. Well, if you can't see it, it doesn't matter how big it is. And I'll never forget that. And I think it's, something that is oftentimes overlooked in our sport. And, I remember when Ocala had a lot of the tragedies that they had. A lot of that, I believe, had to do with the light because of, sometimes it looks like there's a ground line on the back. Sometimes it looks like there's a ground line on the front. I broke my neck on a horse jumping, leaving the ground from outside a shadow and diving straight into a fence. And it's real. I mean, it's a real issue. But and when there's an option of tightening everything up, I think I don't think that it's impossible to have the whole thing condensed. And where it is, look, at the end of the day, everybody's, that's why we have all weather surfaces. That's why we do things that we do to try to make it as level as possible, right? We get that some days it starts off sunny and it rains, right? We get that. Some days, you're lucky to go early. Sometimes you're lucky to go late. We all understand that. But there are certain things that I think we can make better. And, with condensing the schedule, it's going to make it better for the fans. It's going to make it better for the riders. It's going to make it better for everybody. But it does take a little bit more organization. And, but yeah, I think when things are better organized, they run better too, don't they?
Yeah. And I think there is a matter of, sometimes the riders, I was at Chattahoochee one year as well, where the same thing happened. There was a huge amount of fog. And I remember riding at Ram Tap one year where literally you came out of the box and you saw the jump in front of you. You couldn't see to the next jump. It was just that foggy. And we were at Chattahoochee and John Halling was the first one. And he was like, I'm not going. I can't see the jumps. And the TD, whoever it was, came up and basically accused him of being, a wimp about this. And I've ridden both ways. So I'm not taking one side or another, but legitimately to have an official come up and berate you for doing what you think is the safe decision and again threatening we're gonna eliminate you and all that. And the same thing, it was 5 or 6 riders in the warm-up, and it was a very valid point that he was making. The officials need to kind of take that time, go out, design the course, check the light when it's going, that sort of stuff to help understand how it might be perceived, and then realize that you can't always check, you can't guarantee the weather and the fog is not going to be an issue. One other thing though, on your angled brushes, because we had one this weekend at Ocala, very similar at the end of the course. It was prelim, so it was very similar, but obviously a much easier version. And I kind of thought the same thing. Mine jumped through it well, but it was a long 2. And to me, what needs to happen there is it probably needs to be numbered separately as much as having an option. So that if you have a run out of the first one, you can jump it, circle around and jump the second one, rather than what happens is you jump in, you get them over the first one, you're going to have the run out of the second one. And one of the people that was with us got eliminated there because she couldn't get in her, she should have done something differently, but in her mind, she had to kind of get onto that second jump and there was no way to do it really.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, just that finish up the light thing, I think I come by it honestly. That's always been one of my dad's pet peeves, and he always talks about on a overcast day that's the best day for cross country because he says no shadows, and he's always been adamant that shadows and lighting are a huge deal for horses, and so it's been ingrained into me since I was a little kid. But I think he has a fairly valid point. And if not, I'm going down with it anyway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like we do a lot of work here. We've got our jump set in areas where we get different types of shadows, not just dark, but not just, like one tree, but like, the molting of the lights from the leaves, that sort of thing. We school with that intention, um, because I don't want to have to think about it on the day. I'm big on being as prepared as possible so I don't have to maybe worry about the issue on the day. But it is always a concern because if I'm having trouble seeing it, the horse is having similar difficulties probably. So, all right. So to review Fairhill with the leaderboard, we had Marilyn Little winning on Scandalous. That's an amazing horse. She's a incredible rider. And then Demeter was second, so flip flopped in show jumping. Demeter again, you can't. I mean, I'd love to have one of those in my barn. Probably more than the Scandalous horse. I'd rather have a Demeter because it just keeps going. It's got tried, to the bottom of his toes. I love that horse. Then Hannah Sue Burnett jumped up with Under Suspicion to third, and I think that's great. I mean, Hannah Sue is such a great rider, and it's really great to see her, developing even more in her string. So that was pretty awesome. Philip was Philip was fourth and fifth, which he's always standing in there. Then Jenny Karras, who has benefited, I think, from going over to Europe with the U.S. and running at Bramham, wasn't it? She did.
Yeah, she did the under 25 class. She was. Yeah, we had Jenny Karras, who was sixth place in the 3-star at Fairhill. She was the highest placed under 25. She's had a really good year. And it's kind of an interesting situation in that they originally gave her a technical elimination at the last water because they said that she didn't jump the corner on the way out. And I always feel like when there's not hard evidence that one thing or another happened, you've got to go with the rider. It's sort of the analogy of the tie goes to the runner, and or you're innocent until proven guilty, whichever one you want to say. But they said that she did not jump inside the flags, and she said she did. And anyway, they told her the rule, She didn't know the rule, so she kind of accepted everything. And then she went back and read the rule, and then she had to end up going back and getting a photographer's picture of the horse showing that the rule is the head, neck, and shoulder have to be inside the flag. And we actually have some footage of this, and you'll see very clearly that the head, neck, and shoulder are inside the flag. You can actually see this flag standing up if you run it in slow motion. And but to me, it leads to a bigger point of, at what point do we, the officials clearly took the line, well, you were eliminated. Well, you eliminate somebody, first of all, you've got to get, top 10 or top 15 or top 20 or whatever, and 3 stars is a big deal. And with the new rules of having to do 2 3 stars to go to a 4-star, that's even a bigger deal. It's a little concerning to me that there was no evidence at first either way, other than the rider's word that they had jumped the jump, and for them to initially say you're eliminated, and then have the rider have to go back and prove their innocence. For me, that's backwards, and I don't like it, and I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think we have to believe that people are honest and straight, and for every once in a while it's not going to work, but generally what you did, and certainly she was lucky to have this video. But if they don't have concrete evidence, if it's my word against your word, then the person that is doing it, I think you have to trust them, especially since the certainly the fence judges are so great to give us all their time, and they volunteer so much, and this sport doesn't work without these volunteers. And they're asked to do so much on such long days, but they're not professionally schooled in fence judging, other than in the morning you meet at ungodly hours, and you might get a cup of coffee, you might not, and different angles. It's so hard to tell, and so I think it does, if we're going to get this much money and we're going to get, these many rules and this technical, maybe at these kind of fences, we need to start thinking of having some kind of video replay. There's lots of cameras at these big events. Anyway, a lot of them are live streamed, but, we're lucky that we have this video to show everybody, but it is at many events, and in many instances, Jenny would be left with an elimination on her record, and maybe not a qualifying score to move on to the next thing, which she clearly deserves. So I'm glad it worked out for her, but it does raise the question of where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, when you watch the video, which should be running right now, you can see the horse. I mean, got in deep. It had its one leg outside the flag, but everything is over top of the corner other than that. And so you can see how jump judge at speed might think, oh my goodness, it had the run out, or it didn't go on the flag. But how difficult would it be to have cameras there? And most events do the live streaming stuff. And it is a little like, Fairhill wants to jump up to, to the level that, that is being expected of competitions now. There should have been live streaming there, because not just for this reason, but because you're going to draw in your audience. It's not that difficult to put together. So it's a little unfortunate that that she had that stressful moment, but it all worked out in the end, and she ended up sixth. And she's a great kid. I think she'll be a very good. I guess she's not a kid anymore, but she's gonna be I think she'll be very useful in the future of the country. She's always around, learning from Philip and watching and being involved and working. And there's not a lot that have that work ethic, but I mean, she's always impressed me with that, and her riding is very good. So I'm happy that went really well for her. In our 2-star, we've got Jenny Brannigan won on Stella. I thought that was just great to see. That she's just always a pleasure to watch ride, and she's so competitive. Emily Bashir didn't have the best run in the 3-star. Her show jumping came completely apart. She was made up for a little bit by being second in the 2-star. So, nice for her. Again, a very good rider. I think that's the thing, is you're not seeing a one-off in these groups.
Doing shit.
Lauren Kiefer was third. Again, you've got real quality people there. And then I think, worth mentioning, Dom Schramm stepped up to a very good placing on his horse. Looks like he was fifth. That's, I think, his first 2-star performance, and that was a good placing for him. He's got a lot of recognition from the show that he used to do, but he's backing it up with some good riding now. So that was nice.
I think for me, the biggest, for me, the most impressive sort of riding this weekend is, for me, was Will Coleman. I think the guy's an unbelievable talent. But the difference in that Boris O'Hara that looked like it was about nothing turns into this spectacular looking horse. And I didn't see it go cross country, but I saw it show jump, and that was ridiculously good. He had, I know he had 3 horses finish on the SI score, and then he had a little bit of a disappointing result in the 3-star with a horse that it was in the top 10, and the horse Tight Lines. But I think still overall he had an unbelievable weekend, and he has some horses that look fairly promising for the future, and I think that's exciting, because he's certainly one of this country's best riders, and it's nice to see him with the string that he's brought up, and certainly I was impressed with his riding, and so not that probably means anything, but Jenny had a great weekend on her horse. She's really worked hard with that. It's a different kind of horse for her. It's a big striding, very bold, big jumping horse, And I worked with her a little bit this winter, and the improvement it's made throughout the year is very impressive. And I know she's looking for big things in the future. So it's always exciting when you have a nice 2-star horse, because they, that dream is still there, right? And at the end of the day, we're all dreamers. And there's no bigger dream than once you win a 2-star that, all right, here we go to the next level. And, it remains to be seen if any of these horses end up going on to the next level and then a level beyond that. But you're still dreaming, and you're really, really excited about that fancy 2-star horse. So all these guys that were up in the top 10, top 20, whatever, are dreaming about the spring and excited going into the winter, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah, well, it's nice to finish the year on that and be able to spend, it's not like you got to go out to another event next week with those horses. You can actually give them some time off, and you can spend all of November being on top of the world. So, we're going to talk, you're up in Kentucky. We'll probably get together this week sometime, talk about the Hagyard event there.
Yep, I'm actually out here at the Hagyard Mid-South 3-day event, and it's for me it's a great event. Hagyard is obviously a great vet hospital, and they do so much for the horse industry, whether it's racehorse industry, the sport horse industry, or anything to do with horses. And it's a great event. Derek does the course. It's always whether it's Rolex or wherever you are, it doesn't matter, or it's the Hagyard 1-star. We're always privileged and lucky to be able to ride at the Kentucky Horse Park, and they put on a great course. They're out. They haven't had much rain here in Kentucky. It doesn't look like, but they're out. They've got the pods out and they're watering the track. And Mick Costelli just walked in here, and I know he's been working hard. And but this event couldn't run without Hagyard and all the great things that they do, and for the sport and the horse park and horses in general. So when you have a great sponsor that puts so much into this event, that I think it's important that the riders come and support it. And it is the USCF National 1-Star Championship, and there's some really, really nice young horses here, and hopefully it'll be a good weekend.
Right. Well, good luck there, and it is a popular event. It's again nice to finish the year at something like that. So we have a little ways to go still here in Florida for the year to end, but have a good go, and we'll have a little talk about that later this week.
And then in our next episode, I think we have a very exciting announcement that I think everybody will be really excited about. And Kyle, you don't even know what it is yet. And
nope.
I think it's something that is going to really be fun for the sport to follow over the next year, 8 months, whatever. And it's all for the right reasons. And I'm excited to announce that on the next show. So there you go.
All right.
Be watching one time.
I better tune in.
Yeah, you better. Exactly.
Okay. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, guys.